The penultimate episode of The Last of Us Season 2 is finally here, and this was one that I've been really looking forward to watching after we got the teaser at the end of episode 5. With words from 1983 having just as much meaning in 2029, and this episode specifically showing us the journey of Joel and Ellie's time 2 months after arriving in Jackson, highlighting what eventually caused their relationship to deteriorate. This was an emotional ride from start to finish. I thought Joel died with Ellie mad at him, but in seeing that conversation on the porch that we didn't see in episode 2, it gave me, and I imagine many other people, closure that I felt like was needed with that relationship. So with that, let's dive into the episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is The Last of Us Season 2 Episode 6 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The opening scene. As per usual with The Last of Us, the opening scene in this episode was one that held such weight, importance, and it was connected to the very thing that we saw occurring at the end of the episode. Within the opening scene, Joel took the rap for his brother Tommy, and he was prepared to take a beating from his father so that Tommy wouldn't be on the receiving end of it. However, Joel's father knew that it was Tommy that had done wrong and was actually responsible. This sparked a conversation between father and son, and Joel's father spoke about how when he was younger, following him stealing a candy bar, his granddad hit him and broke his jaw, something which made him think about how he'd never do anything like that to his children. When in actual fact, even though Joel's father hit them, he didn't view it as bad as what his grandpa did to him, telling himself that he's doing just a little bit better than what he was on the receiving end of. And he even said to Joel, when you have your own children, you'll do a little bit better too. This is a line that carried right the way through to the end of the episode when Joel finally admitted to Ellie what happened when he took her away from the Fireflies and killed many of them, saying to her that he'd do it all again if he was given a second chance, and that if she eventually has children, she'll look to do a little bit better than what he did, showing that with time and through different generations in a family that the long-term effects of these small changes are made because people learn from what they experienced and went through. This entire opening scene served as a way of showing us a couple of different things. The first is the deeply caring nature that Joel has for those that he cares about. For example, in taking the rap for Tommy when they were both younger. Joel is a protector, and we've watched that trait in the character throughout both seasons of the show. So in seeing that in 1983 he was still the same way with his brother, it showed that it was ingrained within him, but it also showed that it was ingrained within him due to his environment and the first-hand experiences of being on the receiving end of the way that his father would treat them. Another reason why this opening scene was so important was due to the callback to the conversation several decades later, with Joel passing on that advice to Ellie just like how he received it in 1983 when he looked at his father in the way that Ellie was looking at Joel. There's something about these conversations, you know, the small ones that you have with your family that don't seem to matter that much at the time, but they stick with you, sit with you, and you feel you learn from them with time. And that conversation around the table in 1983 is one that obviously stuck with Joel. We saw the love and care that Joel had for Ellie all throughout this episode with the way that he treated her on her birthday and the level of protection that he wanted to give her. So it's almost like he pushed her away by doing the complete opposite to what his father did to him. It almost showed that even though Joel went in the opposite direction to his father, he somehow still ended up in a similar position and at the same destination, showing the complicated nature of parenthood. The scene on the porch. This scene is arguably one of the strongest moments in the entire episode. We were originally led to believe that Joel and Ellie's final words to each other were what occurred at the New Year's party with Ellie lashing out, and when Ellie walked off after looking at Joel on the porch, I thought that was going to be the case. However, she returned, and it was here where Ellie raised the questions to Joel that she wanted to raise to him a while back about what actually happened in Salt Lake City and if he was responsible for all of the deaths, because she was suspicious of the fact that it could have been him and that what he told her was a lie when he promised her that it wasn't. This was sparked following Joel killing Eugene and him promising Ellie that he'd allow Eugene to return to the gate so that he could say his farewells to Gale. But then, behind Ellie's back whilst she went to get the horses, he led him to the lake and killed him. Ellie was reluctant to leave because she hesitated when she walked off. And I imagine this was most probably because of the suspicions that she had of Joel before. But with him saying "I promise" once again, that's what made Ellie turn on him when they got back, expose him for being the liar that he was to Gail, and put the final nail in the coffin on their relationship. This is why their relationship was so messy at the start of the season. This conversation that occurred on the porch not only allowed their final words to each other to be far better than what we originally believed they were, but Ellie even said that she'd tried to forgive Joel for what he did and the fact that he lied to her, showing that there was actually room for progression in their relationship and that they were going to work on addressing things, so their relationship was in a much better position than what we thought. Hearing Joel quite literally saying to Ellie that he loved her simply shattered my heart. Throughout every beat of this episode, we witnessed Joel doing a plethora of different things on her birthday. From calling her baby girl and comforting her when she burnt her arm, to getting her a cake for her birthday and restoring a guitar so he could teach her, taking her to the museum on her birthday so she could experience something that was out of this world and from a time before, to allowing her to go on the patrol and to even setting her up her own space when she wanted to be out of the house. Joel's love for Ellie was something that ran deep because he was a caring person, but something that I also think is heartbreaking is that he was doing with Ellie all the things that he thought he'd be doing with Sarah before she was taken from him. So it wasn't him living it through Ellie, it was just his opportunity at being a father a second time round. Joel saying the words to Ellie that his father said to him all of those years ago and essentially being viewed by Ellie the same way that he viewed his father was a moment that I thought hit really hard as well. And it was the perfect way for this episode to round off. The emotions, the tears, the passion, and the performances by both Pedro Pascal and Ramsey were immersive and just sublime. The meaning of the moth. The moth tattoo that Ellie got in this episode got a bit of a focus with Joel wanting to find out what it could mean. Plus, there was also another moment where Ellie was walking through the forest and she saw some fireflies that were flying around which caught her attention. It was said by Gail that moths were representative of death, which made Joel concerned. Throughout the episode, there were suspicions from Ellie around what actually happened at Salt Lake City and that she feared that Joel lied to her and that he killed all of those people for her. Which is something that she feared because that would have meant that her survival would have brought about death, when realistically, if they had have used her for a cure, then her death would have brought about transformation and life. So quite the opposite. So with Ellie surviving and her believing that her still being around is what caused a large amount of death and the continued state that they were living in with there not being a cure, it felt like that's why there was this intrigue in moths. In her book, there was a note that she wrote along with the drawings, which was, "You have a greater purpose," which it felt like was her telling herself that she couldn't let the deaths that occurred define her existence and who she now was in the present day. The scene where we saw Ellie pause as she was leaving the forest, that was also a scene that I questioned at first, but after seeing what she was looking at and that it was actual fireflies in the distance, it felt like a trigger in her mind which showed us that even then, several years before we saw her confronting Joel about it, it was something that was within her mind. My review of the episode. I thought this was a great episode of the show. It was everything that I wanted it to be, with it being entirely made up of flashbacks. Seeing Joel's past and the poor relationship that he had with his father, yet the deep sense of care that he had even back then was interesting to see, because it almost showed us why Joel was the way that he was in the present day. Having the episode essentially move through these yearly and 2-yearly cycles was a nice way of allowing it to have the space to breathe and for us to truly understand what both Joel and Ellie went through when they first got to Jackson, and also how their relationship changed. The scene with Eugene was one that I've been thinking about since we first saw Joel sitting with Gail in episode 1, and it's safe to say that I can understand why she was furious with him. When Joel said, "If you love someone, you can always see their face," it was a line that hit really hard, because at that moment it felt like he was talking from a first-hand experience about the loss of Sarah and that he always saw her when he wanted to. When Joel killed Eugene, it was done in such a powerful way, with Eugene's face becoming the center of the frame. As the camera then moved around slowly, it blocked Joel out of the picture, which meant, just like Eugene, we didn't know when that shot was going to be fired. So it was immersive and it added a lot of tension. I also think the decision to not hear the gunshot but to see the birds flying off was a great decision. It was harrowing and a lot more sinister. I'd also say that Joel dragging Eugene's body back to the gate on the horse and looking back, just like what we saw in episode 2 with Joel being the body and Ellie looking back. It was a real haunting scene because it wasn't that long until Joel was on the receiving end. Even the conversation that Joel and Ellie had on the porch, with him saying, "I'll pay the price for saving you," it was a line that just sent shivers through my body, because as the both of them were having that conversation, Abby was there, lurking in the distance, waiting to pounce, knowing full well that Joel was within Jackson. It was a beautiful scene, but it was also harrowing because I knew what was going on outside of the gates. The love that Joel had for Ellie was something that was truly felt in this episode, and when he finally said it to her, it was a strong moment that it felt like it'd been building for the entirety of it. When Joel performed the song Future Days by Pearl Jam and If I Ever Were to Lose You being prominent lyrics that cut through, with the entire episode pretty much focusing on Joel gradually losing Ellie, it was a dark backdrop for what was to come. This was also the song that Ellie couldn't bring herself to sing in the previous episode, so it showed that she was still in a deep sense of mourning. I don't think I need to tell you how nice it was to see Pedro Pascal back as Joel. I'd missed him a lot since he left in episode 2, so having that familiarity back in the show made a nice change. Honestly, I can't believe we've only got one episode left. Back in the day, you know this would have been getting 10 episodes in the season, and it's a shame that we're only getting 7. With the preview teasing what looks like is going to be an action-filled finale, I'm hoping it's going to be on the longer side to at least make up for the fact that there's only 7 episodes. There's a rumor that it's 55 minutes, but I'm hoping it's going to be a bit longer. So, there you have it, a review of The Last of Us Season 2 Episode 6 and the ending explained. If you want to see every episode of Season 2 of The Last of Us being broken down, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.